Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak, and we're coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point here in Gainesville, Florida. Exit 384. If you've never been to the restaurant or the museum, you got to get here. It's a just absolutely wonderful place. And if you have any questions for us today, please put them in via Facebook Live, and we will get Zach, our producer, to get them to us, and we'll have your answers for you, or maybe not if we can't come up with the answers. I am so excited about having my friend Al-Wajid Aminu as my guest today. This young man, I can't say enough about this individual and how much I've enjoyed getting to know him over the last 4 or 5 years. And just an absolutely wonderful individual. And Wajid, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. It's crazy. You said 4 to 5 years, and I'm like, wow, it has been that long.
It has been. It has been.
Yeah.
We connected at the University of North Florida through Dr. Olson's leadership program there, and it has just
Yep.
been a wonderful, wonderful thing. So, Wajid, this podcast is all about leadership. One of
hmm
my thoughts, as you know, we've shared this on numerous calls together, is that I really believe that you don't have to have some famous name in order to be a great leader. People, like my friend here from Premium Cleaning, Josh Vaughn, a great leader, a wonderful leader. And some of our best leaders are running small Dollar Generals or stores down the road. You just never know who is making an impact in people's lives. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, your journey to where you are, and what your thoughts on leadership are.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree. I think everyone has the ability to be a leader. I think people will sometimes diminish their value and not see that they are leading people every day. But I think it's beautiful when you look at leadership that way, as the impact that you have on people every day in a moment, over a lifetime or something like that. Um, I would say for me, uh, particularly particularly the way that I like to lead is, with a positive nature and trying to impact people in a enjoyable way, or a way where they enjoy themselves, or I make the moment feel just a little bit better for them, and that's the way that I appreciate doing it the most. um, I would say that kind of stems from just me believing that we are on this earth for a finite amount of time, and why not enjoy it? So I
Yeah.
try to live that in my life, and bring it to others as well.
One of the things that you and I have talked about is that ability to look for the good in others, and sometimes you have to look a little harder, right? Some people test us with that mentality that maybe
hmm
not everything they do is the way that you would like to see it done. but you can find good in other people if you open your mind and look hard enough. Don't you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think everyone has the capacity to be good. I think sometimes I actually really think that everybody believes that they are doing good in some way. I don't think anyone truly thinks they're an awful individual. I think, sometimes that version of good may not be good for everyone around them. So, it just kind of all depends on which perspective you're looking at what doing good is. But I mean, everyone that I know enjoys doing a good act. I think there are just many people that appreciate putting more positivity into the environment. And I think sometimes it becomes difficult because, you may not know what effects you may have on someone. And so it can be challenging, but yeah, it's really beautiful when you have that positive effect and you see the smile on their face, and it's just a very wonderful feeling.
So you've had an interesting. I mean, we always talk in terms of you just had your Kobe Bryant 24 birthday. So we always
Yes,
talk in
yes.
terms of those type of things. But you've had an interesting 24 years. Your life is packed with interesting little tidbits. Where did where did the world begin for you? Where were you born? And let's talk a little bit about your early childhood.
Yeah, so I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. For people who are from Atlanta, Stone Mountain is the area that, I grew up in. And then when I was there, I am the youngest son, one of three. My brothers are 8 and 11 years older than me, so I grew up in a household of everyone being, much older than me. And I think that contributed to me having a little bit of an older soul, getting to hang out with people who are older than me most of the time. And then shortly after my parents divorced, I kind of moved around Georgia a good amount. And also my dad being from a Nigerian background, there was a lot of his culture that was instilled in me when I was young, and just a lot of things that I picked up from, the way their culture does things and respecting elders and, treating people in a way that honors your family and, doesn't and do any bad image towards your family. And so, yeah, after that, moved around Georgia a good amount. And then my brothers, they were off and out to college. And my mom was like, "Oh, this is a great time to do what I want to do." So she decided to move down to Miami, Florida. And that's just a real experience changing from, Atlanta to Miami, just a completely different culture, completely different vibe. And then a little bit after that, my brother was drafted to the Los Angeles Clippers, and then we went out there with him to LA as a 19-year-old kid,
Wow.
getting to be a grown up and, buy a house and stuff like that. So it was cool because, he was a grown up, but at the same time, he was 19. So he had his video game room, and, we play video games all day together and pretty much doing all that fun stuff. And then, we would, just have fun being brothers. And then, with me moving, I feel like I was able to build connections with people really quickly. I could be thrown in any situation and then, kind of get an understanding. and be able to connect with people. So it's been really awesome being able to connect with people of all walks of life. So then after that, kind of moved back out of there, moved to Miami, went to high school, and then ended up doing my senior year up in Georgia. And then we met at UNF,
Yeah,
um, and enjoyed my time at UNF. Played basketball there, really enjoyed that. And then after that, I played professionally in Estonia my first year, right during the pandemic. So that was, pretty crazy situation.
yeah. We had
I
some
was,
good conversations during that. That was fun.
yeah, yeah. I was in the middle of nowhere, like a population of like 5,000 people, with not much to do, but just, kind of play basketball and talk with people. And then I ended up being in Greece last year. And then the last season that I just played, it was in Israel.
That's awesome. That's great. You mentioned your father was from Nigeria. What is your mother's? What was your mother's nationality background?
Yeah, so she was born in the U.S. Don't know too much about going too far into her background, but from what I know, she's American. But her last name, her maiden name, is Leite, which is it's milk in Portuguese, and so I'm guessing there's probably some Portuguese heritage in there. Um, but yeah, she grew up in New York, probably until she was about like 6 or 7 years old, and then she moved down to Georgia, and they met when my dad came to the U.S. for college, and she was starting college as well.
How did that within the house when you were a youngster and for your older brothers? What was the cultural difference? You know, when you were looking at things as far as parenting and leadership and traditions. What was that like balancing those two things? Now, you might have been too young to remember all of that, but what can you recall from balancing those two cultural changes?
Yeah, I think what was really beautiful is just to start their relationship, they had to embrace cultural differences. And my dad, he's through and through a Nigerian, he's lived in the US for a while, but he's through and through a Nigerian. He eats his Nigerian food. He goes to his Nigerian parties. He hangs out with his Nigerian friends. And that was a big part of him. And my mom, she embraced that difference and change, and she wanted it to be a part of our household. And so it was really cool and and different than the experience a lot of my neighbors and friends were having. And so it kind of oh, it influenced me by thinking, okay, I can embrace difference and celebrate difference, and I really appreciate it. And it really allowed me to be more myself. I wasn't afraid to be an individual that was different than other people, and it's always interesting to me because I felt like I got along more with people who were twice my age than my own age, because everybody was trying to be the same and do the same things, and I was over here trying to be different. But it's really beautiful because it's always made me want to explore differences in other people, especially being in Miami. There's a lot of different
Right.
cultures from, through the Caribbean, South
Yeah.
America. You get some Russians there as well. Just a bunch of different cultures. And so being in that melting pot, I learned a lot about different cultures, and it was just a joy.
how about the way that, like, when you were going to grade school, and I'm sure your dad had different ways of being a dad and a parent to you than your buddies that you played ball with or hung out with. And what was that like? Did your friends like embrace it, or were they like afraid of your dad?
Um, it's interesting because yeah, him being Nigerian through and through, it was really cool because friends would come over and we would have Nigerian food, and um it's traditional and very culturally accepted to eat Nigerian food with your hands. And so anytime, a friend would come over and we're eating with our hands, they're like, can I get a fork? Like this is oh my gosh, what are you eating? And I grew up eating it, so I didn't even think to ask the question of what I'm eating. And so I'm here like, oh, I don't know. You gotta ask my parents. And it was a little bit of resistance, but over time it kind of became a lot more comfortable for them, and they understood how to interact with him. And they were a little bit accepting, but it was just so out there for them that
That's
they
great.
took their slow steps. Yeah.
Now your dad, I don't know if the correct terminology is royalty, but he came from a family that had some royalty in them. Did he not? Or
Hmm.
did I catch that correctly?
Yes. So my dad's grandfather, he was considered like the chief or king of a tribe in Ibadan, Nigeria, which is where he's from. And so with that, with how Nigeria is presently constructed, it's more of a nation, but at the time that he was in control, it was kind of more like a tribe and a specific area. So he was the leader of the tribe, he made decisions for everybody. And so as they were forming government, they would interact with him on, okay, this is how we want to do things, and this is kind of what we want to do. And so he would bring it back to his people, and he would make the decisions for the area. um and so with that, his dad, my dad's dad, he I think he may have been the first son of his grandfather, but my dad is not the first son of his dad. So they had many wives. So it's descendant of a king. That's kind of the title that they were given. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
So you got a big family, a lot of ancestors, a lot of cousins and nieces and nephews, and
Yes,
all
yes.
right.
Yeah. I have so many cousins. I get hit up probably a few times a month, learning that I have a new cousin that I've never heard of before. So got a really, really big family.
Now you mentioned your brother, your older brother that played for the Clippers. Uh, what is his name?
His name is Al-Aminu. Yeah, he had about a, I think 10, 11 year career in the NBA. Yeah.
And he went to Wake Forest.
Yes, he went to Wake Forest University, and my oldest brother, he went to Georgia Tech University.
Okay. So when you moved out as a young man, 10, 11, to California, maybe 12, 13, I'm not sure how old you were at that time.
Hmm.
What was that like for you to be, thrust into that opportunity to be interacting with, a brother who was, he was drafted like quite high in the draft that year, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, yeah. He was drafted number 8 overall.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
And
yeah,
what was
but
it like to be thrust into that? And now seeing all of these players and people that you might have admired from afar, all of a sudden you're in the same room with them.
yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because if you're not in the basketball space, you wouldn't know that these guys are really big starting in high school, actually even before high school. I remember my brother, he went to a new high school and there were, kids coming to him like, oh my gosh, you're Alfred Aminu. So I was known for many years as his little brother. My name was not associated at all. So, at that time, once it got to the NBA, it became on a bigger stage and, of course, more well known to people who aren't in basketball spheres. So at that time, I kind of got used to being known as his little brother. And I rejected it for a while because I'm my own individual and, I have aspects of me that I feel, should be appreciated. But at that point, I was just like, I am so happy that my brother's getting all this love and support. And, if people
That's
want to
great.
come through me to do that, it's cool. So it was something that I learned to embrace and, accept. But it was definitely a challenge, starting out in the beginning. But, at that point it was cool because his journey was really incredible. There's not many people that get drafted in the lottery of the NBA. There's not that many people who've been in the NBA. So to see
Hmm.
him get to that level of success is just incredible, and I couldn't be more happy for him.
Now, your oldest brother also took a journey in basketball, but a different journey when he left Georgia Tech. And
Hmm.
what were some of, touch on just a couple of the milestones of his career as he went forward?
Yeah, so he actually um I remember we put together a draft party for him because there was a chance of him getting drafted. And so he didn't end up getting drafted. His name was on the board as like a potential pick for number 60. But he didn't end up getting drafted. And so with that, I believe he did summer league and then he played in the G League for a little bit. At the time, it was the D League. Oh my gosh, that's a long time ago. But yeah, he played there for a little bit. He was an all-star. He did really well. He played great there, and then he got signed to a 10-day contract with the Miami Heat, and then they decided LeBron and Chris Bosh would be better options, so they let him go. Um, yeah.
That's good. I like the way you say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they let him go, and then he ended up going and playing overseas. And oh my gosh, I thought overseas basketball was just so easy because he was like, oh yeah, I won a championship this year. Oh, I won the championship this year. Oh, I won the championship this year. And I was just like, oh my gosh, does everybody win the championship over there? But he had a lot of success. He's played in France, Spain, Turkey, Poland, played in Iran. He's played in a good number of countries over there. And he's had a nice long career. He's done very well for himself.
So we're talking with Wajid Aminu here
Hmm.
today. We're having a great conversation about leadership and different parts of his life. Wajid, I noticed on your LinkedIn page yesterday that you posted that you're open to going to work. Does that
Mhm.
mean that you're closing the door on the basketball world, or uh, you and I haven't talked since your season ended in Israel?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts going forward? What are your plans?
Yeah, so overseas basketball, everybody that I talked to about it, it's a real challenge. Being away from loved ones, family, friends, for 9 to 10 months out of the year, it's a real challenge. And especially with me being married, it makes it even more difficult being away from my wife for that long. And so I'm still looking at opportunities on basketball and what it could provide, but I think it's kind of seeing that, this isn't the lifestyle of, being away from my wife for that long every year. So, I'm seeing what opportunities are available here in the US, for me to work. And it's exciting because this is where I saw myself going after my career in basketball. And so business has always been very exciting to me. And I just have been like giddy about it, about, what type of business opportunities I can get into. So yeah, I'm looking to see, what type of work opportunities I can get into here, and just looking for a change, so that I can be with my wife more. I can pop down to Valdosta, maybe, it'll be easier when I'm in the US, not
Yeah,
when I'm in Israel or Estonia. So it's just kind of where I see myself headed, and I'm excited about it.
that's great. Now you're living in New Hampshire right now with near Caitlin's family, your wife Caitlin. And
Yep, yep.
how did the two of you meet?
So uh this is always funny. So the first time we actually saw each other, um, I am very, very social. I was extreme extrovert my freshman year. I would say hi to everybody about every 2 minutes because I'd be running into somebody that I met and had a conversation with. So with that, I decided I was going to be a part of, quote unquote, a part of the swimming team at UNF. And fun fact about that, we only have a women's swimming team at UNF. So
Ah,
so, it was a joke thing, and it was just fun, but I was hanging out with the swimmers enough to where, I quote unquote felt part of the swim team. So me and my best man at my wedding, Benny, we decided to come along with the swimmers when they were having recruits. And so when they were having recruits, they were showing them around campus, and we're like, yeah, this is what you can expect, when you come to UNF, basically doing the job of somebody who's on the swim team. And then uh, it was the freshmen that we were with. And so we went to the beach, hung out with the recruits, and then we went to get food. And so when we went to go get food, some of the other swimmers came along, and she sees me and she's like, who is this guy who's tagging along while we're showing recruits around? Like, what is he doing here? And so I actually don't remember that reaction. She told me about that. And so then probably about a few weeks later, I knew who was on the swim team, and so I saw her in study hall, and I was like, oh, let me introduce myself, quote unquote, being a part of the swim team. And so we chatted for a little bit, and I said hi, I really enjoyed our conversation. So, we exchanged information, and then we just wouldn't stop talking with each other. And, we just became really great friends, best friends. We always hung out with each other. And then,
Hold that
now
thought. Hold that thought.
Mhm.
We're gonna take a break here in a moment, and we'll have a couple of minutes of commercials, and we'll come back to you and pick up that story. You're listening to Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point inside the Coach's Podcast Room. We'll be right back.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back to Motivation U, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. My guest today, Wajid Aminu. And just an incredible individual, wonderful story. 1 hour on this program cannot capture everything that I'd like to talk with and about this individual. So right before we went to break, we were just found out how he met his wife, Caitlin, who graduated with an engineering degree and works for a prominent Fortune 500 company in our world. But finish off that story. So you were part of the swim team, the women's swim team, probably by your own invitation, knowing you.
Absolutely.
And so you met in a study hall afterwards, and how did that wind through to be connected? Because one of the points that you bring up there, yes, you're a fantastic athlete. I've watched you play basketball, absolutely great. Defensively, this man, I'd put him on LeBron tomorrow. But I think your wife might be the better athlete in the family. Now, I'm sure you guys discuss that once in a while. But go on and carry on with the story of how the two of you connected. Pick it up from where you left it.
Yeah, so we just kind of kept communicating after we exchanged information, and I would be, hanging out with her all the time, but all this time it's kind of in secret, because I was like, don't want everybody to know about this, just because I felt like I felt like I just wanted to enjoy it for myself and not share it with everybody. And we really enjoyed our time together. And then after talking, for a while and just kind of enjoying each other's company, we became best friends. And then, we kind of started our relationship. And it's funny because during the pandemic, we were, probably about 3 years into our relationship at that point. And one of the things I remember learning in the pandemic was that in China, a lot of the couples that as soon as they were able to be free from, being stuck in home all day, I think they said about 50% of them got divorced. And it was just crazy. And I was like, oh, wow, I guess them being forced to spend time with each other all day, every day was not helpful for their relationship. But I mean, at that point, our relationship really blossomed, and it just, we basically connected, so deep, and we really just got to enjoy time with each other. And we were forced to be in a space with each other, and we didn't get sick of each other, so that was beautiful. And then after that, I went to go play in Estonia after I graduated. She had a year left in college. And then when I came back from Estonia, I proposed to her.
I remember
And
that.
so, yeah, that was really exciting. It's funny because she's a little bit impatient, and so she was like, you can just buy the ring and ship it to me, and we can already be engaged. Because it's really difficult surprising her because we just love telling each other everything. And so, she knew it was going to happen. And so, yeah, I went ahead and proposed. And then, because of COVID, we were worried about being able to visit each other because when I was in Estonia, we weren't able to visit each other at all. And it was because we weren't married. If we were married, they would have given her an exception and she would have been able to travel. So when I went to Greece, before going to Greece, we were like, we definitely would love to be able to travel and see each other. So we went ahead and got married at a courthouse before our wedding that we were already planning for the next summer. And so we will be married for 2 years at the end of July, which is crazy to think we're in the year stage instead of the month stage. And then we had a nice, big, beautiful wedding this last summer. And yeah, we've just been loving life together.
Your wedding was interesting too, from the standpoint that there was traditional clothing from the Nigerian side worn. In some of the people that were in your wedding were not from that world. How did you balance that? What was that approach? How did you, because that's a big part of leadership. How do you tackle delicate situations and make people feel good about it, feel good about everything. So how did that take place?
Yeah, so um, it's really cool because just with the type of person my wife is, she's on it, and she's great at communicating things, and she does a great job of understanding a situation and figuring out the right things to do in the situation. And so, you know, we kind of talked about it and we were like, all right, like what are we planning on doing for the wedding? And we were able to collaborate really well. And I really wanted to add a Nigerian element, and she knew it would be cool with her family. And so yeah, we kind of thought it through. My dad, he actually went to Nigeria to get the traditional Nigerian clothing for us, and so all that coordination, it worked out, and we talked it through, and of course, she was excited about having her wedding a certain way, but it was really beautiful that she wanted to incorporate something that was important for me as well.
I loved the pictures. Unfortunately, my wife and I could not make it to the event,
Yeah.
but I loved the pictures and just how colorful the smiles, the clothing, the beautiful backdrop of where you were married. That was just a wonderful way of combining that. You you were a part of the Taylor Leadership Institute uh, at UNF. What was
hmm
that experience like, and why did you get involved in that?
So, um, I can't remember exactly my first interaction, but I believe so. There's a program called SAC. It's a Student Athletic Advisory Committee, and it's run by the NCAA, and it basically gets athletes together to talk about issues that athletes face, and then also tries to get them to do more as an athlete and community involvement and things like that. So my freshman year, they were just like, "Hey, you're doing this," and I was like, "Okay." And then as I got into it, I fell in love with it, and it was really great. And so Dr. Olson, who's in charge of Taylor Leadership, he would often collaborate with SAC in doing things. And so from that, I was like, I'm really enjoying his energy. I'm enjoying everything that he's about. I'm enjoying everything that he was talking about in the interactions that he had at SAC. And so I was like, I got to do one of his classes, like I definitely think it'd be very beneficial for me. And I really enjoyed it. It got me into more taking a mentorship role of a few people that I've become a mentor of, and also seeking out mentorship. I think that was the thing that I really appreciated the most from it was that it allowed me to get things from people that I wouldn't normally get. And so for me, one of my personal ideas about leadership is seeing role models that I really appreciated. I really loved Martin Luther King. I really loved Nelson Mandela. I appreciated, the charisma and the personality of Barack Obama. And I would look for people around me, Dr. Olson, and I try to find the qualities that I really appreciate them and incorporate them in how I lead and approach things. And it kind of helped me develop a leadership philosophy being in the Taylor Leadership Program. And so I'm so glad I was able to do that. It was absolutely wonderful.
You had a head coach at UNF for your basketball team who had a major impact on your life.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about your coach and what his leadership style was like and what you've absorbed from him.
So he's just such a awesome individual. I think everybody that he impacts, he leaves a mark on their life. He's a little bit wild, just someone you just don't meet every day, and so he makes an impact on absolutely everybody that he meets. And one of the things that he does that's amazing is at every UNF orientation, he gives everyone his phone number, and he says, if you need help with anything, I'm here for you. Just text me anytime, and I'll see if I can put you in the right direction, help you myself, or get somebody else to help you. And he calls it servant leadership, which is, I think it's the best form of leadership. It's someone who takes the onus on themselves to either push someone that is following in the right direction or do something for others. And I think it's a great form of lead by example. And he's a great individual. He has a belief that, you know, there's beauty in everyone, and that he can make something out of every interaction that he has, and he does that every single day. It is really impressive, and he's really a great coach. I mean, wonderful coach, and just the best human being, that uh, well, my wife is the first, but he's one of the best human beings that I've met. Yeah,
Now we're talking about Coach Matthew Driscoll. That's the head coach's
absolutely.
his name. And what are some of the things like? Is there I mean, he is such a great speaker. I've heard him a number of times. Giving talks. Just sitting in a room with him when it was like three or four of us sitting in his office that time. He'll stand up
Yep.
and you just start. Oh, it's like wow. What are some of the little nuggets that you've picked up from him that like stick with you today when you go through your life?
That's a great question. I I think the first thing, um, from the first interaction I had, I remember the first time I met him. I was in high school. He came to my school to talk to me and tell me that he was offering me a scholarship, and he just was so genuine in his interaction, and he liked to keep things straight. There was no nonsense. There was no I'm trying to sell you something that's not accurate. He made sure to be accurate with what he was talking about, and he's like, I'm gonna do the best that I can for you, even if it's not me that you're gonna end up with. I'm gonna do the best that I can for you, and that's just how I do things. And I'm not gonna tell you it's gonna be easy. I'm not gonna tell you it's gonna be, like this. I'm not gonna, baby you or anything like that. He's like, I'm gonna tell you exactly how it is, and I'm gonna love you. And the way that he loves people, him and his wife. I mean, they're just such a great duo together. It was truly inspiring, and I think I always felt like I had to sugarcoat things, and that came off as nice. And I think picking up from him that you don't have to sugarcoat things, and you can still be a great, kind individual. That was one thing that I really loved learning from him. And then another thing, that I try to lead with every day is he he's done so much. I mean, he was a fifth grade teacher. He, worked at a car shop. He had so many different odd jobs, and you could tell that his motor was I'm doing something. I'm active. I'm working towards something. And that by far is something that I've picked up and has become a really big part of how I approach things. Just with my open to work on LinkedIn,
Yep. Yep.
um, I'm not, waiting and sitting around. I'm active. I'm a doer. I'm going for the opportunity. I don't want it to, oh, possibly it could come to me. I try to take any little step that I could possibly take towards it. Um, whether it's, doing something on LinkedIn, whether it's, applying, whether it's looking at YouTube videos on, what you should do as an early career person. And it was awesome how precise he was and how prepared he was. And that's something I still try to work on, but it's his practice plan, it was ready. It was all scheduled out. If there were adjustments that he needed to be
Details,
made,
details, details.
absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I think sports teach you so much about life. You really realize that some things are so important, absolutely.
The
And
ups and downs.
yeah, with details and with all, just understanding that okay, here are the big picture things, these this is what you should be working towards, and then those little details are so important in the execution of those things. And so it was just wonderful being around an individual like that because it really helped me to kind of focus on how I wanted to approach things.
Now, you mentioned in conversations we've had and things I've read about that you've written about technology and how it's going to shape our future. How do you see technology shaping our future? Because that's something that's like really important to you.
Oh yeah, I like to consider myself a bit of a nerd, and it's really interesting because, especially when you think about the Industrial Revolution, the impact that it had on the world, and at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, that technology is very primitive to the technology that we experience today. So with that, it's very fascinating and interesting to see how technology from all the different types of softwares that are out there. I mean, a lot of the positions you'll see in business are they require you to know some type of software. And the interesting thing I think about how technology is going to move us forward is I think we're going to get to a point where menial tasks, you actually can see it today, actually. You can go to a McDonald's and they'll have the big screens where you can order food, and they're starting to bring in robotics into these more simple tasks already today. There are companies that are doing food completely made in the lab, and not, they're making meat completely in a lab. It's very fascinating, to see all the different avenues where science and technology come together, and it's making new possibilities day by day. And one of the big things that I thought was super, super fascinating is there's these things called quantum computers. And so the idea is that, computers are supposed to run on a binary with a one and zero. And I mean, you see all the possibilities that a computer can do. It's incredible. And the quantum computer is supposed to kind of exponentially increase the ability of what a computer can do because it doesn't just run on a binary. A cool thing is it's supposed to be able to be in two different positions and do the same thing from two different positions. So instead of just one and zero, you now have um, I think it's like yeah, four possibilities with two digits. You know, you got 00, 01, all that type of stuff like that. But you can now exponentially increase that because you can have a one and a zero at the same time in the one digit part. And so it's really fascinating. The computation time is supposed to decrease by a lot. What takes like months for a computer to compile will now take a couple of minutes, and so I mean, technology is all around us, and it's really exciting.
We're talking with Wajid Aminu, and I'm here in Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the Coach's Podcast Room at this incredible restaurant. You got to get yourself down here. You get on I-75, and when you get to Florida, exit 384. Just get off here and bring Caitlin down here for some dinner. I'll meet you here.
Yeah, for
We'll
sure.
come down and meet you. But we got about 3-4 minutes left, Wajid. Tell me, what are some of your dreams and aspirations that you would like to see in a business career as you go forward?
Yeah, I I I would say for me, the thing that excites me about business is the decisions that are being made in business. I think, the direction of a company, that a CEO sets, can be very interesting, and the way that it is implemented within a company, within an industry, and the effect that those things can have are very interesting to me. I was just looking at an article about Oracle and Microsoft. They are working together by having their servers being kind of shared and rented from each other for their new AI capabilities. And the genius part about that is AI has been thrown around a lot lately. Like everybody's talking about AI, Chat GPT, all that other stuff like that. And so with that, you don't want to just put out this massive investment because it's kind of trendy, the idea. And so being able to share their servers is a great idea because it's kind of as a at need base, and you can see how it performs over maybe the next year, 5 years, and have the ability to really ramp it up and then go make that big investment. And so I think in my career aspirations, I would like to be, maybe like a VP, or, president level, or, a high executive helping to make those decisions that can really impact a company and make it so that we're we're putting ourselves in a good position so that we can really do some things. And I mean, business, it can be done well at any level, especially the way positions are now. There's not a lot of fluff in positions, but I'm just excited for the opportunities and can't
That's
wait to see what happens.
Well, if there's a company out there looking for a quality human being, which is a great place to start, this young man is one of those individuals. I just absolutely love talking with him. We're going to have to do this again. Now, next week, you and I'll get together on a Zoom call and just do our normal conversations and find out what's
Absolutely.
going on in each other's lives. But I absolutely appreciate you being here with me today and absolutely love the conversation. So thank you very much, Wajid, and enjoy your holiday weekend.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
This has been Motivation U, the podcast.